My granddaughter held up the gift I had spent 9 months making with my own hands in front of 140 brunch guests and asked her new husband, "Where should we even donate something like this?" The room burst out laughing. The groom studied the chest I'd built her, every joint cut by hand, and offered his review. Honestly, it'd make decent firewood. More laughter. And then his father, a man wearing a watch worth more than my truck, strolled over, peeled $200 off a gold money clip, tucked it into my shirt pocket, and patted my cheek. "For your effort, old-timer." I was 73 years old, standing in a rented mountain lodge, wearing the suit I'd worn to my wife's funeral, with cash stuffed in my pocket like a valet. And I said nothing. I picked up the chest my back, complaining every step of the way, carried it out to my truck, and drove home through the Blue Ridge fog. And here is what none of those laughing people knew. What my own granddaughter would never again have the chance to touch the thing hidden beneath the false bottom of that chest. If you've ever made something with your own hands, only to watch it become a joke to someone else, then you'll understand exactly how I felt in that moment. All right, let me take you back to the workshop, because that's where every part of this story was built. My name is Roy Tillman. I'm 73. I live outside Asheville, North Carolina, in the house I've owned for 46 years, and for most of my working life, I was a cabinet maker. The kind of trade where you measure twice, cut once, and apologize to the wood if you get it wrong. My hands are a map of that life. A finger that doesn't fully straighten, calluses in places most people don't have places. My wife Pearl used to take those hands across the kitchen table and say they were the most honest things she'd ever read. Pearl's been gone 4 years now. Her heart, in her sleep, gentle as everything else she ever did. And the loudest thing in my life since has been the quiet. Our granddaughter Brianna grew up in my workshop. I want you to know that, because it matters for everything that comes after. From age 5, she'd perch on a stool in a cloud of oak shavings, sweeping sawdust into piles with a toy broom, asking me why the wood smelled different when you cut with the grain. She called it the good smell room. She helped me, genuinely helped. Small hands steadying a board build a birdhouse when she was 9 that still hangs off my back porch. That little girl loved the workshop. And then she grew up, and she met Chase Norwood. And the Norwood family began, politely and relentlessly, to sand her down into someone else. The Norwoods run vacation resorts and rental developments all through these mountains. Dale Norwood's name is on billboards from here to the Tennessee line, and they are the kind of people for whom every object is inventory, and every gift is a press release. 18 months in that orbit, and my Brianna started saying things like brand story, and started introducing me as her grandfather. He used to do carpentry, past tense, the whole 50 years of it filed under quaint. I told myself it was a phase. Grandfathers are champions at telling ourselves things. When the wedding was announced, I knew immediately what my gift would be. Knew it the way you know a board is true before the level touches it. 2 winters back, a storm dropped the big white oak on the old family farm, the tree Pearl and I were photographed under at our own wedding. The tree Brianna's mother climbed as a girl. Most folks would have bucked it into firewood. I hauled the best of that trunk to my shop, stickered it, and let it dry for 2 years, because I already suspected what it was waiting to become. A hope chest, quarter-sawn white oak, the ray fleck shimmering like weather moving across a field. I worked on it for 9 months every joint. A hand-cut dovetail. No screws, no shortcuts. The lid fitted so true it closes, with a sound like a held breath being let go. Inside the lid I inlaid a small brass plate engraved with her grandmother's favorite line, "Made things carry the maker." And underneath the cedar-lined bottom, I built the part nobody would see. A false floor, a hidden pin, a compartment, the old way, the way my own grandfather built them for wills and war letters. Into that compartment I placed 3 things. A certified check for $155,000. Pearl's life insurance money plus 4 decades of a careful man's savings. Every dollar we had ever set aside for Brianna's someday. Pearl's sapphire engagement ring, the one she wore for 51 years, sized I checked without her knowing to fit Brianna's hand. And a letter, 2 pages in my carpenter's block print that ended, "The money buys a start. The box is to remind you that the best things in a life are built slow, on purpose, by hand. We love you beyond measuring. Grandpa." And because I wrote it as if she were still here, and I will not be apologizing for that Grandma Pearl. I planned to tell Brianna about the compartment quietly, a few days after the wedding, just the two of us in the workshop where she'd grown up. That was the plan. Hold on to that plan. Watch what happens to it. The gift-opening brunch was the morning after the ceremony. At a lodge the Norwoods rented up on the parkway, 140 guests, mimosa fountains, a gift table that looked like a department store window. I'd delivered the chest myself the night before, with a bow Pearl's sister tied. And I sat at table 11, at my own granddaughter's celebration and watched the performance. Crystal stemware from Austria, applause. A voucher for a week on someone's yacht, gasps. His and hers jet skis from Dale Norwood, an actual standing ovation. And then Brianna reached my chest. She read the tag, and I watched my granddaughter, the sawdust girl, the birdhouse girl, glance at her new husband before she reacted. Glance at him, checking the exchange rate on her own grandfather. "Oh," she said, in a bright, brittle voice pitched to Carrie. "Grandpa made us a box. A few titters." She lifted the lid, that perfect, held-breath lid, and wrinkled her nose. "It smells like a garage in here," she announced. "Cedar, sweetheart. That smell is cedar, and it was your grandmother's idea, 30 years before you were born." Chase leaned over, knocked a knuckle against 9 months of hand-cut joinery like he was testing a watermelon, and delivered his line. "Honestly, decent firewood." And the room, 140 adults in resort casual, laughed. "Where do we even donate something like this?" Brianna asked him, and there was the second laugh, bigger. "I want to pause right here, because some of you know this exact feeling, and I need you to hear me say it plainly. When people mock something you made, they are not reviewing the object. They are telling you what your hours are worth to them, your evenings, your hands, your love, converted at their exchange rate." And the conversion that morning came out to $200, because that's when Dale Norwood made his way over. All cologne and condolence, peeled the bills off his money clip, tucked them into my shirt pocket, patted my cheek, and said it. "For your effort, old-timer. There are moments a man decides who he's going to be for the rest of his life. Mine happened between that pat and the next breath. I did not raise my voice. I did not mention the compartment, and understand. 1 sentence, 5 seconds, and I could have flipped that ballroom like a pancake. I looked at my granddaughter, and I asked her one quiet question. 'You don't want it, sweetheart?' She shrugged and said, 'We literally have no space, Grandpa. Maybe the lodge staff wants it?' The staff. 'All right,' I said, and I stood up, and I walked to that gift table, and I picked up my chest, knees, and back, filing their formal objections, and I carried it the full length of that silent, watching room, out the doors, down the steps, and into the bed of my truck. Nobody helped. Nobody followed. I drove home through the mountain fog with $200 of insult in my pocket and my whole heart riding in the truck bed. And if you've ever driven a road like that, hands steady, eyes burning, you know the quietest rides are the ones that change everything. That night I sat in the workshop with the lights low and the chest on my bench, and I did something I hadn't planned. I pressed the pin, lifted the false floor. And I read my own letter back to myself. The best things in a life are built slow, on purpose, by hand, out loud, in the good smell room, to nobody. Then I folded it, and I sat with Pearl's ring in my palm until the shop got cold, and I had the longest conversation of my widowhood with a woman who wasn't there. Because here's the corner I'd backed into. That money was always meant for Brianna, but I taught joinery for 50 years. And I'll tell you the first law of it: you do not anchor good hardware into rotten wood. It doesn't hold. It can't. The values that chest was built to carry had just been laughed out of a ballroom by the very person it was built for. Handing her the compartment now wouldn't be love, it would be a reward with love's handwriting. So at 2 a.m, at a workbench older than my marriage, I made the decision. And 2 days later I sat across from Vernon Pike, my attorney for 20-some years. A man with a courtroom voice and a fisherman's patience, and I moved every dollar of it into an education trust for Emmy. Now, you haven't met Emmy yet, and that's fitting, because nobody in that ballroom ever really met her either. Emmy is Brianna's cousin, my other granddaughter, 24 years old, working a hospital front desk by day and a diner counter by weekend, putting herself through a physical therapy program one exhausted semester at a time, and in her entire life she has never once asked me for $1. At the wedding, Emmy sat at table 11 too, and when she'd walked past the gift table that morning, she had stopped at my chest, run her fingers along the dovetails, and said quietly, to no one, before any of what happened, Grandpa Roy, "This is the most beautiful thing in this entire room." She said it to the box, before the mockery, before anyone knew anything. Remember that. It's the whole story. Secrets in a family travel like water through a wall, slow, invisible, then all at once. My daughter Gail came by the following week, saw the chest back in my workshop, and asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Dad, why is Brianna's gift here?" So I told her. All of it. The brunch, the firewood, the $200. Gail went white, then red, in that order. And then, because she's my daughter and her mother's daughter, she asked the sharper question, was there something in it? And I have never been able to lie to Gail. I showed her the compartment, the check, the ring, the letter. My daughter sat down hard on a sawhorse and cried for the money, a little, but mostly I think for the letter, because she recognized the handwriting of both signatures. I asked her to keep it between us. I'll tell you exactly how long that lasted in a family, 11 days. I don't blame Gail, a thing like that leaks through a person like light through a knothole. She told her sister. Her sister told a cousin, and somewhere along that chain, it reached Brianna. I know the precise moment it reached her, because my phone's silent since the wedding, not one call, not one thank you, not one apology lit up with a text at 9:40 on a Tuesday night. "Grandpa, I've been thinking about you so much. Can Chase and I come by Saturday? We really want to see the chest again. I feel terrible about the brunch, it was so chaotic. Miss you." 4 exclamation points. From a young woman who had not called me since her grandmother's funeral. I read that message twice, set the phone down on the workbench, and said to the empty shop, "Well, Pearl, the termites found the money. They arrived Saturday at 10 sharp, and I want you to slow down with me here, because I've replayed this next half hour more times than any other of my life, and you've earned every board foot of it." They came up my gravel drive in Chase's white SUV, and they came dressed for church. Brianna hugged me on the porch for the first time, in 2 years, hugged me long, for an audience of nobody, and said, "Oh, Grandpa, I've missed this place. It smells like my childhood." "The good smell room," I said. She blinked. She'd forgotten she ever called it that. Inside, Chase circled the chest where it sat on my bench, and the same man who'd appraised it as firewood now ran his hand across the lid and pronounced it his word, masterful. "You can really see the craftsmanship," he said, nodding like a man at an auction preview. "The joinery. The grain," I agreed. And then Brianna took a breath, clasped her hands, and delivered the speech she'd rehearsed in the car. "Grandpa, the brunch was a disaster. The stress, the crowd, I said things I didn't mean, and it's been eating me alive. That chest belongs with us. It's our wedding gift. It's family history. We'd like to take it home today. Family history." I let the words hang in the shop for a moment, among 50 years of shavings. And then I said, "You're right about one thing, sweetheart. There is history in that box. Let me show you." I walked to the chest. I pressed the hidden pin, their 2 heads snapping toward the click like bird dogs, and I lifted the cedar floor, and I stepped back so they could both see clearly into the secret compartment their sudden love had come to visit. Empty. Nothing but the smell of cedar, and the small brass plate inside the lid catching the light. Made things carry the maker. The silence went on so long I could hear the creak behind the shop. Chase spoke first. Of course he did. "There was. We heard there was." "You heard," I said. "Interesting." "From who?" Brianna's face was doing arithmetic and grief at the same time. "Grandpa, was there money in there?" "For 9 months," I said. "There was $155,000 in there. Every cent your grandmother and I ever saved for your start in life. There was her sapphire ring sized for your finger, and you never knew I'd checked. And there was a letter it took me 4 evenings to write and 1 brunch to unwrite." "Where is it?" she whispered. "Somewhere it's wanted," I said. "It's in a trust now, for Emmy's schooling." Chase actually laughed one short, ugly, disbelieving bark. Emmy? The one who works at the diner? The one, I said evenly, who called this chest the most beautiful thing in the room, before she knew it had a floor that lifted. That's not fair, Brianna cried, and there it was, the voice of the girl who'd shrugged at the gift table, finally arriving at full volume. That money was for Emmy. You said your whole life. You said I said it was for your someday. I agreed. And then I watched you hold my someday up in front of 140 people and ask where a person donates something like this. I kept my voice at workbench level, because the quietest man in a room owns it. Sweetheart, you didn't reject a box. You rejected everything your grandmother and I built a life out of: patience, hands, things made slow and meant to last. The check was just riding along inside. Chase pulled out the last card in the Norwood deck. You'll be hearing from our attorney. This constitutes, he actually said constitutes a promised gift. I smiled at that. Son, I said, a gift you appraised as firewood and instructed the lodge staff to keep was never accepted. My attorney's name is Vernon Pike. He's expecting the call. He was looking forward to it, honestly. It's been a slow month. They left the way that kind always leaves, loud in the driveway. Gravel spitting, and Brianna paused once at the door. And for a second, 1 second, I saw the sawdust girl look out through all that lacquer. Then the SUV door closed. And here's the lesson I want to hand you before we finish this run. People show you their appraisal of you when they think you have nothing left to give. Believe that appraisal the first time. Everything they say after they learn about the compartment is negotiation. The Norwood attorney's letter arrived 9 days later on heavy stock, full of phrases like constructive delivery and detrimental reliance. Vernon read it aloud to me over coffee, chuckling in the good parts like a man reading the funnies, and replied with a single page that said, in courteous legal English, the gift was publicly refused, verbally disclaimed, and physically abandoned by the intended recipients in front of 140 witnesses, several of whom recorded it, and the trust in question was funded from the grantor's own assets, which he may point wherever he pleases. We never heard from them again on paper. Dale Norwood tried once by phone man to man. Roy, let's not let the kids' theatrics cost everyone, and offered, and I quote, to make the whole misunderstanding worth my while. I told him I already had $200 of his, and that it had covered everything I ever needed to know about his family. Then I wished him a good season at the resorts, and hung up gently, the way you close a door on a room you're done with. Telling Emmy was the finest hour of my year. I asked her to Sunday supper, slid the trust papers across the table between the biscuits, and watched her read them 3 times before her hands started to shake. Grandpa Roy. No, this is Brianna's. It was never hers, I said. It was ours, mine. And Pearl's waiting for the right hands. It's been waiting for yours the whole time. I just didn't know it yet. She cried into her napkin, and then she said the thing that certified every decision I'd made. Can I still come learn the shop? Even now. As if the money might cost her the sawdust. That's the girl, Pearl, I thought. That's the one. The chest went home with Emmy. That same month she wouldn't take it until I told her, truthfully, that a chest like that needs a house where the lid gets opened. And 16 months later, the marriage that was too glamorous for handmade things ended exactly the way things built for photographs end. Chase, and a leasing agent from one of the resort offices, and lawyers, and a settlement, and Brianna back in her mother's guest room at 27, with a hyphenated name to undo. I took no joy in it. Write that down, no joy. When something you predicted collapses on someone you love, being right is just grief with paperwork. And then, on a wet Saturday this past spring, my gravel drive crunched again, and it was Brianna, alone, no SUV, her mother's old sedan, no speech. She stood on the porch where the birdhouse still hangs, and she said, Grandpa, I'm not here about money. I know it's gone, and I know why. She looked at the workshop door. I was wondering if the good smell room still lets people in. We're going slow, she and I. She comes Saturdays. She's learning dovetails, and she is terrible at them, and she knows it, and she keeps coming back anyway, which, if you've spent 50 years around apprentices, you'll recognize as the only qualification that matters. Last month, she sanded a jewelry box for 4 hours without once checking her phone. Rotten wood can't hold hardware. But wood isn't people. People, sometimes with enough seasons, enough honesty, enough sawdust people can cure. So here's the one thing I'd ask you to actually do, and it costs a page. The next time you hand down something that matters, a ring, a tool, a recipe, a chest, write its story down and put the letter with it. One page. Where it came from, whose hands wore it smooth, what it's supposed to carry forward. Because objects can't defend themselves in ballrooms. But a letter in the right drawer outlives every brunch on earth. And then sit with the question this whole year carved into me. When somebody hands you something they made, do you see the object? Or do you see the hours? Now it's your turn, because Vernon and I have argued this across a lot of coffee. Put a 1 inch the comments if you think carrying that chest out in silence was exactly right. No scene, no reveal. Let the compartment do the teaching later. Put a 2 if you think I should have pressed that pin right there at the brunch and flipped the ballroom in front of all 140 that the lesson needed witnesses. Put a 3 if you think moving the money to Emmy went one board too far, that a 25-year-old's worst morning shouldn't cost her a legacy, and family deserves second chances with money too. Because I'll be straight with you. On the Saturdays I watch Brianna fight a dovetail and lose with good grace. 3 gets a hearing. Tell me where in the world you're listening from, and what time it is there. It amazes me how far a woodshop story can travel. And if you've ever poured months into something handmade and watched it lose to something with a logo, tell me about it below. Somebody reading tonight just got laughed at over a gift they built, and they need to know the laughter says nothing about the work and everything about the room. If this story meant something to you, subscribe and stay a while. I've got a lifetime of them. And this little corner of the internet only keeps its shop light on because folks like you keep coming back. Thank you truly for sitting with me tonight. I'll see you in the next one. This is a fictional story, inspired by real emotional experiences, fully rewritten and reimagined in Asheville, North Carolina, to create original content. Any resemblance to real people or events is coincidental.